Welcome to Byrna Nation. We have a real special treat today. We've got three of the major players in the less lethal space with us today. We've got Greg from East Coast Less Lethal, Daniel Spencer, and John Reynolds from Alternate Arms Self-Defense. First off, I just want to say to these gentlemen, thank you so much for doing this on a Saturday. Before we started, I was saying that for me, Byrna is really a double bottom line business. My late wife said to me years ago, you've started a lot of businesses, why don't you start one that helps people? And I think we've done just that with Byrna. These other gentlemen, like me, really believe in less lethal, and they have done a lot to promote less lethal. And it is really a privilege and honor for me today to be able to get on with them and take some of their questions regarding both our new CL and just the industry in general. Please feel free to ask me anything about any of our products and our mission and the development process. But let's get started.
Sounds good. Well, Bryan, I want to tell you, thanks for having us. It really is important. You're the first person that's ever done this. And, for a CEO to step forward to talk about his products live like this is a very cool thing. It really is. Just want to get that out right off the bat. Each of us had talked about it, so we all kind of have our little questions that we have specifically for you. So I want to start with one that's kind of light and you'll love. And this was actually a question from a viewer, but clearly Byrna is an anagram, correct, of Bryan?
That is correct.
Okay, all right. I want to get that out of the way because everybody was asking that. So one of the major questions I get are the joule rating of the Byrnas. I know that you've categorically stated on multiple occasions that you will never go above a certain point. I'm assuming that a lot of that has to do with law enforcement input and studies you guys have conducted. Can you tell us a little bit about that and what those points are?
Look, this is an extremely important question, and it's one of the things I did want to talk about today because I know some of the things that you've recommended have joule energy that's above the joules that we would release a product. I live in the Boston area. There was a very unfortunate incident years ago. You may all remember this. A woman, I can't remember her name, I think it was Snellgrove, was killed with an FN 303 Herstal round after the Red Sox won the World Series. And it was an 8-gram round that had about 33 joules of energy. It hit her in the eye and pushed her eye back into the brain and killed her. And we feel strongly that the most important thing is that we remain non-lethal. Now, we all know that there's, 1,000+ deaths that tasers had. Some of those are primary. Many of them are secondary. Somebody gets hit and they fall down and they hit their head on the edge of a table or they stumble out in traffic. We know that sooner or later that will happen to Byrna too, but we don't want to have any primary deaths as a result of our launcher. Our 12-gauge round is right up around 20 joules of energy. And for us, that's about the maximum, particularly with a 61 caliber round. And our 12-gauge round is also 61 caliber. So when people are talking about getting into that 30 joule range, to our way of thinking, you're getting too close to lethality.
Right. And I will tell you, Bryan, that and I don't want to speak for Greg or DK here, but the three of us agree with you. And we fight this on a daily basis. There's always somebody out there that is trying to push these up to lethal, which defeats the entire purpose of what we're trying to do. So saving lives is what we're doing. So, all right, I'll pass it down there to Greg, let him have his next one, and keep it moving.
Hey, Bryan. So I really want to thank you. This is an honor, and it really is my pleasure. I like being here, and I really love the new CL, especially the fact that it's 61 caliber. That's going to lead into my first question. I've been saying for actually weeks before the Byrna CL came out, I spoke to my partner Angelo, and I said to him, I wish we had a different caliber other than something people use for paintball, like a proprietary less lethal caliber. And then lo and behold, this comes out, which I think was genius. And I just watched your video with where the police officers took that hit from it, and you can clearly see that it was more effective. That second hit, it did do a little bit more damage than the 68 caliber. It was great. And I'm curious for you guys, and I talked to some other people, will you be offering something like the Mission 4 or a carbine style in 60 caliber, and will you maybe transition over to this from 68 down the road?
Yeah, very good question. And I like to say great minds think alike. Our intention is to migrate entirely to 61. And I'll tell you why 61. We gave a lot of thought to this. First, we don't like being the same round as paintball. A lot of the other products are repurposed paintball guns. There's a lot of Me Too ammunition on the market, and half of the effectiveness of the launcher with the chemical irritant rounds is the launcher, and half is the chemical irritant rounds. So you can have the best launcher on the market, but if you're using inferior chemical irritant rounds, it's not going to be effective. We recognize that people will copy 61 over time.
Yeah.
But there will be a period of time where we will have this market somewhat to ourselves. And, the most important point for us was to make the launcher narrower. So the original Byrna HD and later the SD was really modeled after my Glock 19. So it is exactly the same length along the barrel as my Glock 19. It is the same distance down the grip as my Glock 19. But because it's 68 caliber, it is much wider. We're almost 1.5 inches wide. My Glock 19 is close to 1 inch wide. Much, much easier to carry. And our goal was to get down to 1 inch wide. It's also the reason that we don't have external safeties on the new CL. We wanted it to be as smooth as possible, as narrow as possible, to make it really easy to conceal carry. So we wanted to get small. The problem when you get small is you lose payload. So, DK, you brought up the issue of, going to a 43. A 43 caliber from a kinetic standpoint is really effective, but it only has 25% of the payload of a 68 caliber. The 61 has 73% of the payload. So you're giving up something, but you're still able to fill that box. So we did a lot of testing with a dummy inside a box around the dummy, making sure we were filling the box. And that's how we ended up at 61. It is narrow, small enough to give us a narrow launcher, but large enough to give us the payload that we need. And I do think that everything will migrate to 61 as we redevelop these products.
I personally love that. I've been saying that for a long time, and I've done study with like the 50 cal chemical rounds, the 68, and with the 68, there could be a lot of collateral damage, especially people with asthma. And you narrow it down with a little bit, less powder in there, and it's effective.
Yeah, people say that, you've got less powder, but my argument is the powder that's out here and out here is of no
Useless.
Yeah, no effect. It's the powder that's right here that's effective.
Yeah.
On that question, to Greg's point, if you do migrate all of the launchers or in the future go to 61 caliber, the LE is going to put out considerably more power with a 61 caliber, correct? So are you looking at maybe getting over that or regulating it down?
I don't know which one of you said, I think that one day they'll bring out an extended version of the CL. Okay, Greg. We've been discussing that. I have to say that we're pretty powerful with this CL. We need to really think about how much more powerful we want it to be. The other thing is, if you look at our numbers, you did a speed test, Greg, and DK, you did a speed test, and they were different. One of the reasons that we see, and we try all the CO2 on the market, the CO2 is different. So we see different performance based on the CO2 that's being used, and we see differences in CO2 even within our own CO2. So, every once in a while we'll see something that's a little slow, and, it's a lighter CO2 that just wasn't filled as much. So, yeah, I do think we're going to have to very seriously consider what do we do with the LE. Now, as you can imagine, there has been cannibalization of our existing products when we brought out the CL. The SD, not so much, because you've got a pretty big price difference between the SD and the CL. And people say, look, I'm not going to carry it with me. I'm going to put it in my glove box. I'm going to put it in my nightstand. I don't really need the smaller launcher. But to be able to get basically the same stopping power on the CL as the LE, that's fallen below 10% of our sales right now. So the question as to what we do with the LE is something that we as a group have to think about. And I will say to you, one of the things that I was probably going to save to the end, but I'll share it with you now. I've been talking with John Brasseur, our chief operating officer and head of new product development. We want to put together a committee of you and some other folks, if you're willing to do it, to give us guidance on new product development, because you guys have such a good touch on the market. You've got so many people that are responding to you. And I'd really like to have this discussion as to what does the evolution of this industry look like? Should we be doing an LE? Should we be doing an extended version of the CL? But that's something that I think you guys can give us some very valuable input on.
Well, I tell you that my users are screaming for a Byrna boost already. They would love to see a 12-gram cartridge on that.
Yeah.
I would like to see also, I work in the security field, and I do carry, I've been carrying my CL with me this last week that I have it. And I will tell you, I think a little longer one with a little more rounds for like law enforcement, I think it's great because it's so narrow and compact. It's just fantastic. Yeah.
DK, I think we shortchanged you.
That's all right. That's all right.
You're up.
I'll unpack a couple of things. So mine's not going to be a softball question, but the rest of mine are. But I'm going to get this one out of the way because we posted, and asked people what do they want us to ask you guys. And first of all, let me address the 43 caliber thing. Now, I don't think that a 43 caliber is good for less lethal. Because if you get a lot of power, you've got more of a chance of penetration the smaller it gets. So I think a 61 is actually better than a 43. But I guess kind of the big thing in the community, you guys went to the joules per square inch. And I was actually talking about the 43 as an example of why the joules per square inch doesn't really work out in the less lethal world. And in the ballistic world, joules per square inch is not really most of the time considered something that you want to use. It's not considered a very accurate portrayal of power. And just to kind of give an example of that, a Red Ryder BB gun, which we all know kids shoot each other with Red Ryder BB guns. So a Red Ryder BB gun is about 1.5 to 2 joules total power. But because when you're doing joules per square inch, and I did this example with the 43 caliber just to make a point, the Glock 43 is very underpowered. I took a shot from one in a video the other day, and I can promise you the CL is a lot more powerful. But in the 43 caliber at 7 joules, actually a little bit under 7 joules, if you plug that into the formula and get the joules per square inch, it's about 44. Now the CL, you guys claim it at 41.9. So when you're using that joules per square inch formula with the 43 caliber, because it's even smaller than the 61 caliber, it gives it that advantage of higher joules per square inch. But it's not more effective than the CL. So you're looking at 41.9 with the CL, or you're looking at 44 joules with the Glock that has considerably less use and less lethal. Well, then when you look at like a Red Ryder BB gun, all right, they average 1.5 joules to 2 joules. All right, 1 joule at, obviously a Red Ryder BB gun is a 1.77 caliber, so a .177 caliber. So you're looking at a considerably smaller projectile. So when you plug it into the formula, you're getting, at 1 joule, you're getting 40.6, so almost identical to the CL. Well, I can promise you the CL is going to hurt somebody a lot more than a Red Ryder BB gun. And if you're looking at a Red Ryder BB gun on the higher end of the estimate, which would be 2 joules, now you're up to 81.3 joules per square inch. So you guys caught a lot of flack in the community.
I agree with that. We did catch a lot of flack, and it's a very good point. But I'll tell you why we did that. So first off, I hope you trust me on this. It wasn't some slick Madison Ave marketing ploy of let's see if we can pull the wool over somebody's eyes. We did a lot of human effects testing. We knew that this was extraordinarily painful. So we were not surprised when you saw that video today. It was not always the second shot. So we mixed it up. Sometimes it was the first shot, sometimes it was the second shot. 100% of the time, people told us that the CL hurt more. So we knew this, and we were trying to figure out how do we get this across. And we used the formula for, you're calling it joules per square inch, we call it energy density. But that was the reason we did it. And because it is less joules than the LE, there's no doubt about it. The other thing, just so you know, is we don't take the fastest shot. We look at the first 5 shots. So we look at the CL at 350 feet per second, the LE at 330 feet per second, the SD down at 280 feet per second. And we knew that they were very, very similar. That's what you heard from the law enforcement people today. And the energy density was very similar. So our goal was to try to get that across because we didn't want people to think that with the CL they were compromising on stopping power.
Right.
Our message was it's got essentially the same stopping power, and I stand by that. I do think it has the same stopping power.
I don't disagree with you on that, but I think kind of how it boiled down, in the community, if you've got someone who doesn't understand anything about this stuff, they don't even understand what the number means to start with. But then if you've got people like us that do understand what the numbers mean, we're like, okay, well, it works, to a degree if you're comparing, down. But it also, if you compare down to even smaller sizes, it kind of breaks down and actually makes the CL look less effective because, you're getting a Red Ryder BB gun that has actually more joules per square inch. So I think it was kind of confusing.
Suggestions, because I think all of you understand that this is an extremely powerful weapon and it has a lot of stopping power, particularly for its size. I'm not sure the best way to get that across, because if we just put joules versus joules on the LE and the CL, it would look like this, and that really isn't an accurate picture.
Right.
Yeah, you do have one thing that I've always noticed, and I don't know if they've noticed it too, but it seems to me that Byrna tends to under-advertise the power on their launchers a lot. I've been able to get more power out of some of the launchers just with different ammunition than you guys ever. That's a good thing. I mean, it's kind of like a surprise, right?
Look, not every launcher is identical.
Right.
And we want to make sure that the slowest launcher that comes out of the factory is going to meet what the standards are. So we do 100% testing of all of our launchers. And we have minimums that they have to meet. And those really reflect the minimums that they have to meet. Some of them, of course, are faster than the minimums.
Right. Did you notice the blemishes on some of the black ones that went out?
I did. And I feel terrible about it. Honestly, this was a mold that we have 2 different receiver manufacturers. The first receiver manufacturer was here in the United States, and those are the ones with the blemishes. The second receiver manufacturer was in Thailand, and all of the launchers coming out now are from the second manufacturer. All of the ones that we found with blemishes, honestly, have been pulled back, and those are going to be used for Cerakoting.
I do want to follow up one more thing, and I swear everything. I love the CL. I honestly do.
Don't hold back, buddy. I mean, give it to me.
But I mean, I will say that I actually really love this. I've carried it every day since I've got it. It's the easiest thing to carry I've ever had. I do keep it full of pepper. But as far as the CO2 inconsistencies go, are you saying like within your all CO2? Because we're using yours now. I have tested mine, and I actually wasn't even going to get into that part, but since you brought it up, I'll go ahead and talk about it. you know, I've tested mine, and I'm hitting about what a couple other guys that have made videos are hitting too. So I'm definitely way lower than John and way lower than Greg. Greg's is hitting really good.
Yeah, Greg, I would have to say that is really at the very high end of what we've seen. So, you know, we're seeing, honestly, I don't like to see first shots over 400. I think
460 on one. I mean,
yeah,
it's always
I
warm,
saw
but-
that, and we see it from time to time, but that's more, you know, you've got sort of a bell curve distribution, and that's out at, you know, 2 standard deviations. We like to see that first shot very close to 400, the first pre-punctured shot. When it comes to the CO2, the problem we have with the CO2 is, one, we put lubricant in every 10th CO2 because nobody performs the basic maintenance on their launcher. So we can't depend on people buying a lubrication kit and lubricating it. So we know that at least if they're running through CO2, every 10th CO2, they'll get lubricant into the launcher, because the worst thing that can happen is these seals dry out. The other thing is a lot of these CO2 have a very thick foil over the cap. And it makes it, one, hard to puncture it. The first trigger pull is much harder. And two, it can damage the puncture pin. So if you look at the CO2s that you get from SodaStream, very, very thick covering on it. And we've seen people damage the puncture pin. The other thing is they're not all identical size. So if you put one in that's a little bit too big, your launcher is now a paperweight, because you can never get the CO2 out. So we end up with these things coming back to the factory with a non-standard CO2. So that's why we really urge people to use our CO2. And we've priced it pretty low because we don't want to encourage people to use other CO2s. In fact, our best-selling item on Amazon is CO2. We sell many more CO2 than we would for launchers. So clearly people that are buying 8 grams CO2 are buying Byrna's 8 grams CO2. I hope they're not using our lubricant CO2 for their SodaStream, but
So
That would be bad.
that leads me to something that I wanted to bring up, really important. I had a couple of guys that watch my channel reach out to me, and they were really worried about the warranty on that, because like such as Mr. Fizz or whatever, it is a food grade CO2. Is there a possibility that you would not consider them to void warranty? They feel, a lot of them do feel very upset, and that is something that steered them away from wanting to do business. One guy said he was mad. He actually sent the thing back, and he didn't want to. He just wanted a refund. Would that be something you'd be open to, or possibly, I think, maybe offering them to purchase an extended warranty might be something that might be an interesting idea down the road to help both parties.
And
Okay,
Brian,
first off,
can you add in third-party ammunition, because you know it's coming?
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's the other.
Okay.
I have that written down here. I understand metal balls and aluminum balls, they'll destroy the barrel or the detents, but maybe like another PVC brand, provided it's the same size.
okay. So this is a more of a business question,
Yeah.
than a technical question.
Yeah.
And let me just back up for a second. DK, I heard on your video about your poor performance on the LE. And first off, let me just say I apologize. 8 joules is crazy low. I don't know how that happened. And I will send you a new LE. And I am sorry the customer service said that you voided the warranty because you put the heavy ball in there, and we wouldn't honor the warranty. The reason for the warranty is not that the heavy ball is going to damage the launcher. It will not. You know, the worst it could do is maybe the detents could be damaged, but it's not going to damage the barrel. Our concern, of course, is twofold. One, we don't want to get into lethality. We don't want people putting heavy rounds in there, because it would be terrible, not just for Byrna, it would be terrible for the industry if we end up with deaths. So, you know, I'm sort of, you know, I had lunch with Kurt from Grimberg. He's right up the street from me in Maine.
I know he. Yeah,
Yeah, very, very nice guy, and I love what they do. But I said to him, it's too many joules. You don't need to be this, this powerful, and somebody's going to get hurt, and it's going to hurt the entire industry. So that's part of it. On the other end of the spectrum, you have cheap Chinese ammo that really has no chemical irritant, because the chemical irritant is the most expensive part of this. So when this is actually very, very complicated, making the rounds. They've got to do a couple things. One, the rounds have to burst when they hit something. So if you look at our rounds, and we've cut everybody else's rounds apart, our rounds are very, very frangible. And you end up, remember that old commercial for M&M's, melts in your mouth, not in your hand? You want this to break when it hits somebody, but you don't want it to break inside the launcher. We have the most frangible round that will not break inside the launcher. There's a lot of other rounds that are much thicker, and we've done an in-depth study. All of the other rounds on the first 10 shots will not break between 10 and 30% of the time. Only Byrna break 100% of the time. So if they don't break, they're of no value. Secondly, when they break, they have to be distributed. You have to get a cloud, which means it can't clump together, it can't be heavy. Our chemically irritant rounds are 3 grams. Everybody else's is between 3.2 and 3.4 because we have much lighter product in there. And third, it has to have a lot of chemical irritant in it. So that's why we say it voids the warranty, not because it's really going to do damage to the gun. And honestly, I don't think, that we would ever say to somebody, we're not going to honor the warranty because you ran somebody else's ammo through it, because I think that would be 100% of our customers. Everybody runs somebody else's ammo through.
So Brian, what would you suggest if somebody, because I'm not the only person I've heard have that told to them. So what would you suggest if somebody is told that by your customer service? Should they just ask to escalate that up the chain to get to somebody?
Believe it or not, and I'm not telling people to reach out to me, but I have a lot of people reaching out to me. And if somebody reaches out to me, when I heard your story, yeah, of course we'll honor the warranty. I mean, our hope is that we have good long-term customers. We don't want this to be a transaction. We want people with us for the journey. How many of these things have we all bought? I want to make sure every time there's a new model, we've got people that are going through the refresh cycle. So the last thing I want to do is not honor a warranty. We also do offer an extended warranty. It's not an expensive warranty from 1 year to 3 years. We've not really pushed it, but maybe it's something we should push.
Yeah, because I didn't even know about it. I think it would be great.
I didn't know about that either.
Yeah, I think that'd be great. And back to the projectiles, do you ever see it down the road, possibly one with a liquid or a gel inside of it instead of a powder?
It's the physics of that are very, very difficult because the liquid moves. We've tried it. The liquid moves inside the ball, and you get a ball that does this as it's going downstream.
Makes sense.
So the one thing I've wondered, can you clean these the same way you could with all the other ones, like literally throwing them in a pool?
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure you guys have seen the video where Josh comes out of the water and he fires it.
Yeah.
So we've done this is a very, very durable launcher. We drive pickup trucks over it. We throw it down, the hill. We throw it in the creek. It is a durable launcher. So honestly, that's why I'm saying putting somebody else's ammo in it is not damaging the launcher. We're just trying to discourage people from doing that.
Right.
And honestly, I'm going to say that so right now, after the CL, I've got 7 in my possession right now. I've got 3 TCRs, I've got an LE, I've got an SD, and I've still got my original HD, which is actually what got me into less lethal to start with. I wouldn't even be doing this if I hadn't discovered the HD way back in the day. And other than the other LE that I had the issues with, I've never had, and I shoot these things a lot, and I've never had any issues with any of them. And, I know it's frowned upon, but even my TCRs are turned up way past what they should be. and they've held up, phenomenally well. So
Well,
I do
I'm
believe
glad
that they're
to hear it.
reliable.
As you can imagine, I've shot thousands and thousands of rounds through these things. My favorite thing to do is when people are quiet in the office is to walk out in the office and start shooting into a target tent to wake everybody up. But they're very durable. When we do have a problem, it generally shows up very quickly. And it's not as a result of misuse or abuse. It's
Right.
generally there's a part that was malfunctioning in the launcher. So we do 100% testing of the launchers, but we cannot do 100% inspection of the incoming parts. There's 114 parts that go into a Byrna SD, and we make 1,000 a day. So that's 114,000 parts that go through that factory. We would be, we'd grind to a halt if we had to examine every one. So we recognize that some things are going to slip through, and we just would urge people, let us know, we'll take care of it.
Good answer.
And Brian,
Very
I know
good answer.
when you and I had talked at SHOT Show this year, and
Yep.
one of my favorite things about Byrna, and always has been, is how American-made the products are. A minute ago, you mentioned that a lot of the CL parts were coming out of Taiwan. Are we going to be pulling that manufacturing back, or what's the plan on that?
Only 8% of the parts are coming outside the U.S. The CL is actually the most U.S. made launcher because it was the most recently designed. So 92% of the components are built in the U.S. The molds for the exterior shell are with our supplier that has done all of our exterior shells, and they're made in Taiwan. They represent, interestingly, only about 4% of the cost of the launcher. So it's that and a few other small parts that are made outside the U.S. We are moving molds to the U.S. So that ultimately, even the exterior shell will be a made in the U.S. Component.
Yeah, that's hugely important.
Part of this is obviously, that we've been very close with the Trump administration through our various endorsers that we've been working with. So it was no surprise to us that the tariffs were coming. I mean, he was very clear about this. And as soon as Donald Trump won the election, we really made a concerted effort to get out of our, overseas suppliers and move to the U.S. because, we knew that we were going to be affected. We didn't know how much, but honestly, right now, the safest way to do business is to have your supply chain onshore. The other thing is, you don't know when there might be another pandemic. I mean, if you remember back in 2020, there were months that we had more days that we were shut down than we were operating because, we had parts that were sitting in a container off the port of, Long Beach.
Yeah.
Yep, I agreed. Have you guys ever considered some kind of a trade-in program or a trade-up for new customers or old customers?
We have thought about that. I think it would be a logistical nightmare, and we'd have to have something to do with it. So, but we have thought about it, and honestly, if we had markets where we could sell used launchers, and I think these launchers have life, way beyond, the first couple of years. Yeah, I would consider that.
Okay, that's cool. And the other question that I got quite a bit about that was, so when the EP came out, and I know that I may be in the minority here, but honestly, I loved that pistol. The simplicity, pick it up and fire it. But originally, wasn't that one canceled because of people's negative reaction to not having a safety on the launcher? And if so, where the next question's going. So
Yeah. We don't need a safety on the launcher for ensuring that it won't fire. There really is an internal safety on these launchers. We've dropped these from 30 feet. They're not going to misfire. As you know, the whole barrel has to move back
right.
for these things to fire. So,
But not not the safety aspect, but the aspect of being able to charge it prior to
Pre-puncture.
that first shot. Yes.
It's the pre-puncture that's really the issue. Now, I don't know if you guys have discovered this, but if you pull the trigger back part way, you'll hear it puncture. And then your first shot is at full speed. So, we've got people here practicing with, I want to try to get that first shot as fast as possible. If you pull it back very fast, you're going to be at about 50%. If you pull it back more slowly, you'll be closer to 80%. We are looking at it. My biggest concern is simply I don't want anything that's going to snag. I really want to try to keep it from snagging. We are looking at a bladed trigger so that the bladed trigger could act as the pre-puncture.
Clever. So it'd pull back and lock at a certain point unless you were on the
Yes.
blade. I like that.
Yes.
That's a very good idea. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And again, that was from John because that's what SIG uses.
Yep, that makes sense. That makes sense. Are you guys planning on going to that joules per square inch on all measurements now, by the way, for all launchers?
I don't know. DK's giving us a lot of shit, so I'm not sure I really want to do that.
As long as we standardize. The other day I ran into a guy that was doing a test on glass, and shooting it at glass, that's where that measurement really sort of sparked to me. Because in the beginning I was the same person because 42 joules, I jumped out of my chair when I saw the ad because I didn't quite catch it.
Yeah, but it's energy density. I think the most important thing is not the absolute number; it's the relative number.
Yes.
How does it compare to other things on?
Right.
the
And we were
market?
talking about that because I was talking to one of my law enforcement officers over here, and he said, "Yeah, that's where it applies because you're putting more power
Right.
at a smaller point."
Right.
So
Exactly.
if you're going to continue to do that, I would say standardize it across the board one way or the other. So
Look, I think that right now our mistake, honestly, was not to list both because it's not like the CL is a low joule launcher. It's more than the SD. I mean, it has a fair number of joules. So I should have listed the joule energy and the energy density instead of just the energy density.
Yeah,
And
if you're
live and learn.
If you are looking at breaking glass, that is one place that is where that would. It's kind of like a woman in high heels walking on a tile floor. You're putting all that energy into one little spot. It doesn't translate into necessarily pain on a person, but when it comes to actually breaking glass, that is one place that number does actually have a little bit of weight.
Yeah.
So.
John, your son actually had an interesting analogy, though, of the bowling ball. What we were trying to do is to say if you have a 1 pound hammer and it's on a 3/4 of an inch wide head, and then you have a 1 pound hammer that's on an 8-inch head, try nailing something in with a 1 pound hammer on an 8-inch head. You'd find it very, very difficult. So there is something to energy density. I agree with DK that at the extremes, it doesn't work. But, for things that are relatively close, because I know the 61 caliber is as painful as the 68 caliber coming from an LE.
Yeah.
And I've offered to get shot, and I will get shot with this. My wife is giving me shit about it because I had triple bypass surgery last year. But all my employees are saying, "No, boss, get shot. You need to get shot with this."
Nope.
You need to leave this to Ballistic Joel.
Let Joel take those. Yeah, let those
Joel
guys.
do it.
Yeah, let them. Because I've only taken one hit ever. I'm never doing it again. So yeah, don't do that. I ought to thank you for that, by the way, Brian, because the fact that they did come up with that joules per square inch got Luke involved in this channel, and it really excited him so much that he's actually going to start a whole thing on the ballistics of the different ammos and stuff like that. So I do appreciate that, but I'd say if you're going to stick with it, stick with it.
Yeah, no, we will definitely stick with it, but I don't think we're going to drop joules. I think we're going to show both.
Yeah,
and
that's
then
a
let
better
people
idea.
Decide because what really bothered me, honestly, DK, was the fact that people thought we were trying to pull a quick one, and that was not the point.
Right.
So I want to make sure that people don't think that we're trying to pull one over on them.
Understood. Well, and I will say this about the 61 caliber versus a 68. There's not a lot of difference, but as John has showed, and other people as well, the accuracy of it is really good because you're not cutting through as much air. So even though it's a really light ball, you're still getting good accuracy with it. So I like the 61 caliber. I think it's a good caliber. So
I do too.
Yeah, no, I have to say, I think it is the future of the industry. I think other people will copy us on this. I think the problem with everybody's launcher, even Kurt's new launcher at Grimberg, it's small, but it's still very wide, and it's just too wide to make it easy to carry. And I honestly, I talked to Kurt about maybe doing something with him because, they're 3D printing every launcher. So, they're selling launchers for $600 that if you actually used a normal manufacturing technique could be a $200 launcher. And I was saying, we've got this big manufacturing facility. Maybe we could work with you to help you come up with something that you could mass produce and get the price of it down. But I think people are going to start looking at this 61 caliber.
Yeah, I think so too. Is there a reason, and this is the business side of it again, the other thing we hear about constantly, and I know they hear it too, is the price that they came out at being like equal or greater than an LE at the end of the day, because you have to add in all the extra accessories. Was there a reason that price point was hit? And is there any chance of it coming down in the future?
I get this question all the time. People say, it's a smaller launcher. Why isn't it cheaper? I said, yeah, well, my Ferrari is smaller than my minivan, but it's not cheaper. It is a high performance launcher. I will tell you honestly, the real issue for us was where to price it so as not to completely cannibalize all of our other launchers. So my concern is that if this was at $399, I would sell zero of everything else. And I have all the tooling and I have so we needed it high enough that the people had to think twice. And we still have, 40% of people that are buying the less expensive launcher. I would say everything over time will come down. As we bring out the next launcher, we'll start to see everything come down as we amortize molds, as we amortize equipment. But a lot of it was just the business decision, and we really didn't know where to start. Honestly, I had a lot of people in the business that were telling me to do it at $599, and I said, that's going to be too much of a sticker shock. And look, I know $549 is also a sticker shock. It's why we gave away free ammo initially on the Mother's Day sale. The other thing is, I had comments, about 61. When I bought this iPhone, it had a USB-C port. And I'm saying, really? Really? All my charging cords, all my headphones, I got to throw away now and buy USB-C? The same attitude, I think, with 61. So we will probably continue to put together bundles and do specials rather than just discount the product.
That's cool.
I think it's better for us to give away other stuff.
Yeah.
I think that's cool.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna complain about the price because the last launcher I sold was $2,300. So
Yeah, I know.
I don't complain about the price because I tell everybody that $549 could save you millions. You use a real firearm, like you buy a Taurus for $200. Whoop-de-doo, you go out and use it. You're going to spend $2 million in a lawsuit. So it's cheap insurance.
That's
Yeah,
right.
I think the thing that bothers me the most is when people say, I could buy a real gun for that.
No, it drives me nuts.
Yeah. Brian,
Yeah,
I did have one guy that asked something that I don't even know that you can answer this question because it's getting kind of sketchy. We've got a lot of these, shall we say, less desirable to live in states that are now starting to limit felons' access to even less than lethal.
yeah.
Rhode Island just put out a thing that's saying they're classifying, which is completely unconstitutional, they're classifying air guns as firearms now in Rhode Island.
Even that Red Ryder BB gun I was talking about,
Which
according to
is
their
a-
law, is a firearm.
That is a massive problem. So I don't know if you guys
No.
have had your legal team trying to get in front of that or not.
Yeah, I mean, we work with a law firm called Reynolds. All they do is firearms-related work. But the problem is not at the federal level. The problem is all these states. And it's really a state-by-state issue. And, the thing that bothers me the most is when we fall victim to this replica firearm law. And it's just a lack of understanding. This is not a replica anything. Like saying a golf cart is a replica car. It's not. It's for driving on a golf course. This is for non-lethal self-defense. But yeah, look, I think that's why what you guys are doing is critical. Getting the message out is the most important thing we can do. We are all doing missionary work. because I know for certain 10 years from now, less lethal will be more of a thing, not less of a thing.
I
But
agree.
we need to educate people.
Right. Are we looking at any advancements on the Mission 4? Any new M4 possibly coming out?
Yes, we are working on the Mission 4.
Okay.
And part of the reason we're working on the Mission 4 is that launcher was made in China. And when I have to move it, I might as well use that as an excuse to start with a clean piece of paper.
So,
All right, well, what can we, it's been almost an hour. Let's,
Yeah.
let's take another quick round and we can hopefully answer all your questions.
All yours, Greg.
As far as holsters go, I know you guys are probably working on them now, but what are the odds of you teaming up with? I like alien gear, like for regular fire, because they're so modular and they really, one thing works for, like, they have IWB, OWB, shoulder, everything. Is there a possibility of you guys working with an outside source to come up with?
Guess what's coming next week?
Holsters.
So we have a new holster that you can do inside the waistband, outside the waistband. You can do it left-handed, right-handed. It's a great holster. And again, thanks to John Brasser for coming up with it. We are leveraging his 10 years at Sig Sauer, to some benefit. And of course, we have the red dot sight, and we're coming up with the laser sight for this. We do have, I love the Hogue grip on this. And we're building a machine so we can easily install the Hogue grips at the factory. Because if I have to install the Hogue grip, I end up wanting to kill somebody.
Hand sanitizer helps.
Particularly over this stifling. It's very hard to get that grip on.
Brian, do you actually know which one of the Hogue grips fit the CL?
I don't know which one it is. We will be selling it online, but it's the same one that they use for the P365.
Okay.
So it's a standard Hogue grip.
All right.
And Brian, my last question actually relates back to something you and I spoke about at SHOT Show. A guy asked specifically if you guys are continuing to develop and advance the Peppermax rounds. He said that there was an issue they were having where the seams were breaking after storage for any period of time. You and I talked about this, though, so I think we had to circle back to that. But can you tell us, are you continuing to advance those?
Yeah, so up until 6 weeks ago, all of our rounds were produced in South Africa at our factory there and also at a third-party factory in South Africa. We have kicked off our new ammo production facility in Fort Wayne, and all of our rounds are going to be produced in Fort Wayne with new equipment with a significantly better weld. Making these rounds is very, very difficult because you've got to fill this with powder like an ice cream cone. And you've got to get the top on top of it without any of the powder getting into the seam. If it gets into the seam, you don't get a clean weld. And of course, you're on a turntable, so it's moving. So, it's very, very complex. I will tell you, we have spent dramatically more money on robotics and equipment for the ammo than we've ever spent on the launchers themselves. It's very tricky, but yes, I think we are there with the the seam weld improvement.
Awesome. And for those that don't know, Brian, I don't even know if you know this, I'm actually going to be up in Fort Wayne at the end of the month, so I think I may swing by and see you guys.
We would love to host you.
Absolutely. So
Times.
that's all I got, guys. How about you?
Yep.
Well, again, gentlemen, thank you very, very much. It's a pleasure. I love watching your videos. You guys do a great job, even when you're picking on me. So, but let's make this a regular thing, and we will invite you to our next product development meeting.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Wonderful.
Awesome.
All right. Well, thanks for having us.